Welcome to the Smart Dating Academy podcast. I'm Bela Gandhi, the founder of Smart Dating Academy and your host. I started Smart Dating Academy in 2009 because I had this crazy knack of giving people dating advice that actually worked, that I took. I've been married for almost 25 years, and now my company helps people to date smarter and to find love. This podcast is meant to bring more love into your life, no matter where you are and what you do. And we're here to bring more life into your love. Smart daters, welcome to this week's episode. I am jumping out of my skin to have you listen to the seismic, earth-changing gems that my friend Alison Fragale is going to bestow upon us. She is amazing. She is a professor, a distinguished scholar of organizational behavior at the UNC Chapel Hill. Yeah, for real. Okay. And has just published the most amazing book, you guys, called Likable Badass. You want me to say it again for the people in the back? Likable Badass. It is so possible. Alison, welcome to the Smart Dating Academy podcast.
My goodness. Thank you for having me. Can I just take you around with me everywhere I go and I just have you introduce me?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Can I be in your
pocket? Introduction. Love it.
Okay. And by the way, we met because I was on LinkedIn, and some women that I think are total likable badasses in my inner village were talking about Alison's book. I'm like, wow, well, if Jody likes her and so and so and so and so, I've got to reach out to her. So I stalked her on LinkedIn, you guys. It really works, and said, I really want to have you on my show. And then we met serendipitously at an event a couple of weeks later with the same likable badass friends. We discovered we are neighbors. And here we are. Tell us about your book. Oh my God, all of it.
Okay. Yes. I mean, I love all the small world connections. Yes. When you said, I want a copy of the book, I'm like, I'll leave it on the porch since we live 4 blocks away. I wrote this book. Yes. So I'm a professor. I don't know if I had a childhood dream, but that wasn't it. But I have been a professor for 20 years, organizational psychologist. So what I specialize in is understanding human behavior, like you, except typically what I do is I help people understand how to use human behavior in their work life for maximum work success, to be efficient at work, to be effective at work. But it's the same idea. It's all about understanding people, understand your audience, and then think about what does that mean for how I can show up, whether I'm negotiating a deal, whether I'm trying to advance in my career, understanding my audience and using it to form my strategy. The book, I oriented it toward women because it's an audience I care about quite a bit. Recognizing that women in life and at work have challenges that sometimes men don't, in a variety of domains, and particularly power and status. And Likable Badass is a book about status, which is how much other people respect and highly regard you. And status is something all human beings seek, whether it's in a personal relationship or a work relationship. This idea of being respected and valued by people we care about. It's a fundamental human need. It impacts our physical and our mental health, where when we don't feel respected, our physical and mental health suffers. When we do, it flourishes. And so what I help people do, particularly women, but it's not a women-only phenomenon, is understand how they can show up in their world to get the respect that they most certainly deserve. And Likable Badass, catchy title, but it has a specific meaning that relates to how people get status, which is anytime we can show up in a way that convinces our audience we care about them. I call that likable, and that we're good at what we do. We have capabilities, we're strong. That's the badass piece. Those are the 2 dimensions that our audience pays attention to when they decide, do I respect and value you? So it's really about giving people the tools to be able to own that, even when sometimes for some people that feels really out of their control.
You're right. You're so right. And it's funny, when I started to dig into the book and I saw the word status, I found myself having a reaction to the word status, right? It's like something people think about, but we don't talk about. And it kind of has a negative
connotation when you think about it. So first of all, after reading your book, you've beautifully redefined it for me forever. So tell us the difference between power and status and why status matters and it's not a dirty thing.
No, it's not at all. So status and power are both fundamental human needs. They're things all human beings want. Power is being in control of resources that people value. Money is the resource. So whether it's in a personal relationship or a professional relationship, if you control the money, you often have a form of power. If you have the car keys and you have a teenager, it's a form of power. If you hold the information that people need, it's power. So power matters a lot. We want to control our own environments, and sometimes we want to be able to have control over other people, and life is better when we feel more in control. So they're both really important, but they're different. So being respected and controlling things, sometimes you get both of those, but you can have situations where you get one or the other. You're really respected, but you don't control the resources, or you control the resources, but you're not really respected. That one turns out, we can talk about that. That one turns out to be a not very fun place to be. And then, so that's the difference between them. Oh, and why is it not a dirty word? I mean, it's definitely a word that we don't understand, but it is real status. A status is a word we don't, power we know about, but to the point where when I wrote this book, it was always going to be called Likable Badass, and that was non-negotiable from the beginning. But the original subtitle that I sold was How Women Win the Status Game. And I thought it was a brilliant title, if I do say so myself. And my editor said, no. Yes, it can be called Likable Badass. No, it cannot be called How Women Win the Status Game. I said, why? It's a great title. She said, because no one knows what status means, to your point. And you cannot put words on covers of books that people don't understand what they mean. It's a terrible book marketing strategy. So I deferred to her. She knew about writing books, but I thought the whole concept was really interesting. We don't have that many fundamental human needs. We have the need for affiliation. That's very much in your space, right? We want to have connections and relationships with other people. A lonely life is not a good one.
We want the lid to our pot.
Say it again.
We want the lids to our pots.
Exactly. That's a fundamental need. Okay, so you're tackling a fundamental need. Achievement, we want to get better at stuff. We want to learn things. That's a fundamental need. Power, controlling things. And status, being respected. 4 fundamental needs. We don't have that many, and yet the status is the one that we're spending probably the least time talking about. We've been talking about achievement for years. We talk about loneliness as an epidemic. We talk about power. We're not talking about this one. So part of it, I think, is simply ignorance of what this thing is. We all know it. We all experience it, but we don't have a label for it. And I think if you can't name it, sometimes it's hard to work on it. And yeah, it's interesting that maybe this is true of all the needs in a sense. Like, maybe even in the dating world, we wouldn't want to say it was super important to us to be coupled up. There is probably a language of being like, I just want to live my own life. And if a great person comes into my life, then so be it. Right? I don't care. So maybe it's the same thing, like that we kind of deny all of these needs, but they're all fundamental to all of us. So it's just a truth, a reality that life is better with them. So I want people to be able to label it. And I don't care if you have to talk about it at parties, but you have to know what it is, and you have to be able to manage yours in the same way that you have to manage your friendships and romantic relationships, because whether or not you're advertising that you're in the market, it still matters to you, and you have to be able to have good skills to navigate it. So we are doing the same thing for different fundamental needs.
And so let's talk about status, because in the world we live in, status is something that exists. We may not understand it. Can you tell us more about this concept?
Yeah. So again, it's being respected and regarded by other people. And the interesting thing about status is it exists only in other people's heads. So just like a relationship, right? You can't have that relationship unless both people want it. And so status, you don't get to claim it any more than people want to give it to you. It has to be this voluntary relationship where people are willing to give you respect. And so what we're trying to do when we manage our status is we are trying to convince as many people as possible that we are likable badasses, because that's how people grant respect. They respect people that are really caring and really capable at what they do. And So we're trying to convince as many people as possible, but we can't control it perfectly, but we can have a great deal of influence on it if we start to affect how we show up. And, your expertise and my expertise, I shouldn't, you probably could say a lot about what I do. I can say nothing about what you do, except that, my own lived experience navigating relationships. But there's a lot of similarities of thinking about how you manage status and how you manage how you manage your romantic relationships, in that you have to do two things really well to navigate status, and the same two things that you'd have to do to be able to land and sustain a good relationship. And that is, one, you have to tell your story. You have to talk about who you are in a way that attracts people. In this case, makes people respect you. But the other thing that ends up being really important for building status is you need other people to tell your story too. So this idea of the person who vouches for you, the whole concept of a wingman or a wingwoman, right, that goes out with you, right, or somebody who can basically talk you up and be able to say, this person is amazing. Those are the two channels that we have that we can build respect, is the things we're putting out into the world that people will see and react to and say, I like that, I respect that. But the second channel, which we can also influence, is other people who are talking us up. So let's go back to the example of how you found me. You didn't find me because you were just browsing in Barnes and Noble. You found me because people you already respect were saying good things about me. Absolutely. That they vouched for me, even though they weren't speaking to you individually. They vouched for me. And because you respected them, you're like, who is this Alison person? I'm intrigued. And now you're much more likely to want to be talking to me now. That's the second channel. And that also really matters in being able to build that respect.
I love that. And so let me ask you the $1 million question. How do we as women or men, we've got plenty of male listeners, how can we affect our status? I mean, sure, I can go out and say, well, maybe I need a nicer car, or maybe I need a Chanel bag, or maybe I need this, but that's not the definition of status in your book or anywhere.
No, I mean, certainly. So there's an idea of like a standing or a prestige, right? This idea of status. So, yes. But this is really what I'm talking about is respect and value. And look, the respect that we have for colleagues and the respect that we have in our personal relationships are different, but the respect matters every bit as much in your personal relationship, right? So I'm a spouse, I have a husband, I'm a parent, I have 3 kids. And as I've told you offline, I'm currently living with my father who's been ill and he's been living here helping us out. So now I'm actually getting to see being the child and being the parent, at times. And the idea of respect in relationships and how it affects how people, how they listen to us ultimately. So what gets my kids to respect me? It's the same two things, right? It's the belief that I know what I'm talking about and the belief that I actually have their best interests at heart. And when they're more likely to be influenced by me and respect me is when they think those two things are true. So there are some domains in which my kids think I know what I'm doing. I was a math major in college. Okay. So when it comes to helping them with their math homework, they'll actually be like a little bit willing to take my help. When it comes to any other form of homework, they're like, Mom, you don't understand how this works. Right. So what they're saying is, Mom, we don't see you as very capable. You're not badass on this dimension. Mom, this is not how we learn it now. You don't get it. Okay. I don't get it. And so when people don't see us as capable, or if my kids see me as working my own agenda that's not about them, they don't respect me, they don't listen to me. Same thing with a partner. So even though there's differences in work relationships and personal relationships, this concept of who respects whom in the personal dynamics ends up showing up a lot. So how do your point was, is it not a bag? Is it a car? What is it? Again, it's two things. In a given domain, I know what I'm talking about. So that could be a variety of things, right? It can be like how you tell your stories about what it is that you've accomplished or what it is that you've done, and that you're using that knowledge for someone else's benefit, not just bragging about how great you are. So it's been a long time since I've been on a first date. I've been with my husband 25 years, but like the whole idea of like someone who goes to dinner and just talks about themselves all the time and just gives you this resume of accolades. I mean, you're like, check, please, right? Like, how quickly can I eat this dinner? They're showing up as very capable, but they're not showing up as very caring. So, you know, the idea of being a good conversational partner and saying, okay, tell me more about you. And then I can add on to that. Oh, that's really interesting. Like, that's what you do. You know, I actually used to work with like, you know, with this kind of company. It seems really similar. Let me ask you a little bit more. When you're doing that dialogue and you're adding on to someone's conversation and you're asking a question back, you're conveying through that dance, wait, I have something to add to this conversation. So therefore I have a capability and assertiveness. This person knows what they're doing, but also a concern for you. And that's how you have to think about it. So that's how we can build it. And what I love about status, and this is where authenticity really comes in, is just like you coach a lot of individual people, and I end up coaching people too on building status. And what I always say is like, okay, tell me, I need to know who you are. Like, what's the true you? And you don't have to change, nor should you change who you are, but you might want to add in something else. So you are very capable. You are very caring. What's your authentic ways to show it for people? Similar to, I haven't read the book, but I'm assuming, have you read the 5 Love Languages? It seems like something you would have read in your line of work. Okay. I have not read it, but I know what they are. And I didn't need to read the book because as soon as someone told me what they are, I was like, I know the answer. Gifts is my answer. Like, gifts is the giving is the one I want to give. Gifts is the one I want to receive. Like, no need to read the book. Okay. But the idea here is that whole idea is blending strategy and authenticity, right? Which is, the authenticity is, what do you like to give and what do you like to receive? But the strategy is also, we'll figure out what the other person likes to give. You're going to get better results. And so that's the same kind of thing that I want to encourage people to think about with status, which is, what are your ways to show up as really capable and really caring? So maybe, right? Maybe you're a great cook. And so you can like entertain people like no other. And so that's one of your great skills. And you're like, I can do that, but I cook in service to you. Like, I cook to like help, you know, something that you can do that's really authentic, that allows you to showcase a unique talent, but benefit other people with it, is going to be the real true way of building status, not like something blingy that you carry around with you, because that doesn't do anyone else any good. It's not in service to anybody else, right? If you're going to have a great handbag collection, like, then you got to lend it out to people. Like, that might build your status, but just owning them and toting them around is not the kind of thing that we're talking about.
I love that. And so take us into, and correct me if I'm wrong, I want to make sure I get this right, how we can, to some extent, affect our status, whether it's in the real world or the workplace, is on this set of axes of warm, cold, assertive, submissive. Can you tell us, to be a likable badass, spoiler alert, it's being warm and being assertive. Mm-hmm. Did I get that right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I want to be one, clearly.
That's right. That's combining.
I want to be one.
So, and these two dimensions, whether you call them likable and badass or warm and assertive, they encompass a host of characteristics, many characteristics. So warm is just, do you care about me, right? We're attracted to people who are warm. Those people might be funny. They might be likable. They might be honest. They might be sincere. They might be giving. All of those characteristics signal you care about me. So that's one piece where authenticity could really show up, right? Nobody has to be the comedian. Nobody has to be the extrovert, like storyteller at the party, but they have to be a person that conveys, I care about you, right? And that's where like the whole idea of like a love language comes in. How do I convey to you, you matter? That's warmth. And we are, whether they are a friend, whether they are a professional colleague, or whether they are a romantic partner, we are attracted to people who display that warmth, to say, I care about people other than myself. Nobody wants to be in a relationship with a self-centered person.
That's such a great definition. I I just want you to know that, right? People talk about warmth a lot, like, okay, what do I do? But to really boil that down to, warmth is signaling and really meaning from your gut, I care about you, because people detect inauthenticity. So when you come from, we at Smart Dating Academy, we always talk about coming from a place of love. Means like you reach in for the heart. I would say in your abdomen, like there's a giant heart. If you reach in from a place of love, you're going to do the right thing. And I love that warmth is just, it's literally showing that you care about others. What a brilliant, simple definition. Love it. Okay. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's great. But the idea is that there's a lot of different ways to do it, right? And you don't have to be a person who's warm and attracts others. You don't have to be just like your friend who has a very different style. You just have to find your way. On the assertive piece, same thing. So competent, organized, decisive, persistent. These are qualities that say I can take charge of my environment. If you give me a task, I can get you done. You can trust that I'm going to get it done well. We respect that. Now, in the work world, we definitely know what that means. You give me a task, right? And I can handle it. And in the personal life, what we look for in terms of the badass qualities can be a little bit different, right? And they can be varied. So now we can bring in, right? I could be really assertive and in control of my environment when it comes to like managing my finances, when it comes to taking care of my kids, when it comes to organizing my house, when it comes to, being able to host an event, whatever it is. So in our personal lives, we often have a whole different set of things that we care about to say, I'm a really capable person. But still, like, if you have like the flaky friend, everyone has the flaky friend, right? And you're like, I love the flaky friend. But like, if I ever have something where we need to like be on top, like I'm not gonna share a ride to the airport with the flaky friend. Yeah. I'm not gonna like commingle our lives in any way, because that person is just gonna drop the ball. That's a sense of saying like, you're funny, I love you, but you don't really totally have my respect, because I can't trust that if I put something that's important to me in your hands, that it's going to get done well. And that kind of trust, like especially, is really important for a partnership, because there's so many different things you have to share to be able to say, okay, if I give this to you, I know you can execute on it. And again, the tasks that we pass back and forth in a personal relationship are different than the tasks we pass back and forth at work, but it's the same idea. And that's that assertive piece, which is like, that's a person who's going to go get stuff done. And, when I think about like, where do conflicts come up between people? Like even in personal relationships, it's either you're not being warm, or I can't trust that you can like do what I need you to do.
Yes, 100%. And on the warmth piece, we talk about this a lot in the dating world, right? When studies show that, 93% of the way people form their first impressions of us are nonverbal cues, and only 7% are the words that we are actually saying. And so what happens when we're texting? We strip away that 93%. We don't have tone. We are not looking at your face, and so I had a client early on, a male, who asked a girl out on text. He said, hey, do you want to hang out on Saturday night? And she responded, yes. And so he came back to me and said, what do you think? I said, I think you have a date this weekend. And he said, but do you think she likes me? I said, what makes you ask that? He said, it was like, yes, like, how about an exclamation mark? How about a smiley face? And so connoting warmth, especially when you're writing in the dating world, is super important, right? There are studies that we've done with Match that show singles that use an emoji or two in their communications are funnier, flirtier, more fun to be with, have more sex. So anyways, might not be appropriate to use emojis in the workplace. My team uses emojis because I'm their boss. So they know a smiley face is a good thing to use, especially if it's like, hey, I need this. So yes, warmth is a big deal.
Emojis were created to basically solve this problem. It was, our inability to convey emotion. And so there's studies from psychology, not about dating, but there's a paper called Egocentrism Over Email. And basically the idea is when we have to communicate via a text medium, whether it's email or text, a written medium, we think that our audience will be able to decode our intent 80% of the time. Like, are we being sarcastic? Are we being funny? Are we being loving? And they are no better than chance flipping a coin. 100%. So we think that they'll be able to read us more than they do, and vice versa. Then we can't read them to the point. What does yes mean? Like, yes sounds positive. Wait, there was no exclamation point. So yes, that we need to think about how we bring these channels in to be able to convey the warmth and the assertiveness, because some of these leaner mediums don't give us a great opportunity to do either.
Yes, you're so right. And we help people at our company, our one-on-one clients, figure out, how do you text? How do you make the ask? How do you move things to the next level? How do you get off of texting back and forth to actually get to a video call? I'm like, don't go on a date with someone sight unseen. There is video everywhere. COVID has changed everything, right? Get on and say, hey, it'd be great to put a face to a name. How about we do a quick chat from 5 to 5:30 on video, and we can figure out where we're going to meet for drinks.
100%. Okay, I need to know your opinion on this. So, in our day, like when we grew up, there was no text, there was no smartphone, there was no phone. There was no phone. I was a management consultant for 1.5 years before I even had a phone. I had a calling card, and I would fly around the country with this card and use payphones. So now, right, even with friends, if I call a friend, or a friend, I should say, let's say a friend calls me in the middle of the day or at night without texting me first, the first thing I do when I answer the phone is a terrible habit. I go, is everything okay? Because we have now become so conditioned that you have to text before you call. So what is the advice in the dating world? Do you say just pick up the phone, or is it now just like, is that like showing up at someone's door? It's like, you don't do that anymore.
Look, once you have a relationship with somebody, I'm a fan of the ambush call, right? Like, I will literally, if I'm free, if a client has to reschedule and I'm free from 2 to 3 p.m., I will go for a walk around Lincoln Park and I'll ambush call my friends just to walk and talk. And they're like, what are you doing? Sometimes they pick up, sometimes they don't. Right. But you know what? Many of them do, because, now they know I'll just ambush call them out of anywhere. But yeah, I think if I'm friends with you now, Alison, which I consider you a friend.
We are.
I wouldn't ambush call you because I know it might put you into fight or flight, and you're like, oh my God, is everything okay? Like, are you on a plane and you can't get one of your kids or whatever it is? So I'd be like, hey, everything's good. Missed your face. I'm going to call you today. And don't pick up if you can't. No pressure. That's it.
Yeah.
How does that sound?
It sounds amazing. Yeah, okay. I figured you'd be the person to ask. You're like the expert in this.
So, okay, so warmth and competence, okay? Competence, that's not the word. I want assertiveness, right? Be the person in the dating world that is caring and warm and interested in the other person, but also do what you say you're going to do, right? Because at work, it's very different. And I want to come back to that in ways that you can show your competence and kind of, your assertiveness and get ahead in the workplace. But in dating, it's pretty simple. If you say you're going to call me at 6, call me at 6.
So you're organized, you follow through. Those are qualities of assertiveness and capability. But also, the other thing is moving first and asking for what you want. So I've come from the world of teaching people to negotiate and influence, normally in professional context. But one of the best tools and strategies we have in negotiation is that first movers get more of what they want.
Ooh,
so right? So rather than sit around and be like, where should we eat? And then someone says, oh, let's go Italian. I'm like, I don't really like Italian. It's like, no, if you have an opinion on something, you're going to get a lot more of you want if you lead with your opinion. That doesn't mean you can't be open to getting a no or someone saying that doesn't work for me. But that's another way that we can assert ourselves, is simply by being the first mover. Like, and I even counsel like kids on this and teenagers and things about, if you don't want to do what your friends are doing or you don't want to do what someone else is doing, the easiest way to not have to say no is to be the one who puts the idea out there. Let's go do this. And next thing you know, you're taking control of your environment. And again, people will negotiate with you if they don't like what you're asking. But that's a way that we can also assert. And people like it in the sense that they like clarity. People want to make us happy and they want to know what's going to make us happy. And so when we ask for, here's what I would like, you get more of it, and it is relationship building. But if it feels really scary, a technique that's useful in work and in personal is to give people choices. So I do this, every parent has done this. I'm going to give you 3 choices. And when you do that, what you're trying to do is you're trying to say, I care about the relationship, so I don't want you to feel like I'm telling you what to do, because then you won't see me as warm. At the same time, I do have some needs in this. I need to make sure I'm getting what I want, so I'm going to give you 3 choices. And the research has shown that when you give people choices, like 3 is a good number because it's enough to give them the sense of choice, but not so much that it overwhelms their brain. They see you as more concerned about them. They see you as more committed to solving the problem and working with them. They like you more, they trust you more, and you're more likely to still get what you want. So that's another tool that we can bring into our personal lives, especially as we're like navigating a new relationship, right? Where we do have things that we want, but we are also don't want to be seen as being too pushy. So, hey, like you could even say like, I mean, you could use it with anything. You could be like, hey, I would love to get together. Like, here's 3 times that work. Like, here's a coffee time, here's a lunch time, here's a dinner time. Like, what do you want? Rather than force someone into a situation they don't want to be in, right? Or here's a walk, or, here's a movie, or here's music, whatever. You can use it in all kinds of ways to give people choice, but to still frame things in ways that allow you to assert and control your own environment. And people do really like that too.
I love this. You talk about this. I want to bring it back to the business world and like life in general. And you talk about the first mover advantage. Mm-hmm. So often you say, we think we have more power. Let's say, well, I want to see what they offer me for this new job first, and then I can respond from there. Talk about why this is, fallacy, urban legend, whatever, and why you should be the first mover.
The idea is that ideas tend to be really sticky, and we get anchored to initial ideas, initial starting points, whatever they are. And we often then find it hard to deviate or adjust from them. And so that's a phenomenon that has nothing to do with, this kind of negotiating. But what happens if we're a second mover? I want to see what you have to say. Well, you sit back and I think, okay, well, let's carry the logic forward. You want to sit back and hear what someone else has to say because what? Because they might be offering you $1 billion to come work for them? Maybe. If that happened, that could happen.
Amazing.
What's also likely is they're going to be offering you something that is at or below what you want. And when that happens and they offer you, let's say, a low number, the risk is you're going to get very anchored to it. Someone says, okay, I'm willing to pay you $50,000 for this work. It's much lower than what you wanted. And then you think, shoot, I bet that's probably close to like the most they can pay. I can't ask for 100 or 150 or 200. I mean, that'd be insane. They'd like laugh me out of the room. I probably got to take it down a notch. Let me see if I can get 75 out of them. And so what's happened in your own head is that first number they've thrown out has caused this whole dialogue for you about how far you can push it before you damage the relationship and they walk away. You don't want them to walk away. So now you're negotiating with yourself, and the number that is coming out of your mouth, let's say 75, is lower than what you would have said if you had gone first. And so that's where sitting back and letting other people control the narrative, the dialogue, can be to your disadvantage. So I always encourage people that you shouldn't be in any conversation of any kind, personal or professional, asking for something if you don't know what was really going to make you happy, because you have no idea when to stop, like what you want. So once you figured out what's going to make you happy, then you should lead with it, because it's possible it won't make them happy. And they're going to say, sorry, it's not going to work for me. Right. But what's also just as possible is they'll say, I can't do exactly what you want, but I can do something. Let me come back to you with my counteroffer. And their counteroffer will probably be better for the fact that you went first, because they're subject to the same psychology that you are. They're going to think Alison wants 200. I can't get anywhere close to 200, but like, oh, could I stretch to 100? Maybe I could if I worked at it. And so now they're still not getting 100% of what you asked for, but they're the ones having to change their expectations and what they're willing to offer. So I really think that a prepared first offer in any kind of relationship, personal or professional, is really to our strategic advantage. And I do see a lot of people give it away Usually because they just don't understand the science, and they don't understand how letting the other person go first is going to stick in their head in a way that they can't unhear it. And all the gymnastics they're going to do in their head, they're going to pull them toward accepting that lower offer that aren't advantaging them.
It's interesting. A lot of people will come to me and say, how do you handle the speaker's fees thing?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right? And so is this a venue that you would recommend a similar approach? If somebody just comes to you out of nowhere and says, hey, we'd like you to be on a panel or give a talk or be the keynote, is
100%.
Put your number out.
100%. Now, I also think that if there's a situation where you don't want someone to just simply walk away because they think it's non-negotiable, when in fact you might be willing to negotiate. I do this a lot. Like I try to size up the situation before. So let me back up. Putting the first number out there doesn't mean that the number has to be the first thing that's said in the conversation. Meaning, in a perfect world, what I would do is I would get online with you if we're going to talk about you hiring me for an engagement, and I would make you love me. And I would make you see me as a likable badass. And you're going to see that I'm super easy to work with and really good at what I do. And by the end of that conversation, you're going to be convinced that there's no one else you could work with but me. Right?
You're worth the billion.
I'm worth it. So then when I do give you a number, you're already a little bit committed to me. And you think, okay, I'm going to try to see if I can make that work. If I'm just a number in an email and you haven't even talked to me yet and my number feels high, it's a lot easier to be like, delete, let me go to the next thing. So I'm still, in both cases, am I making a first offer? Yes. But in one situation, I'm actually trying to justify the offer by how I show up first. And so that's something that we can do. Again, personal or professional, we can do that. Now, when I make an offer, there are situations where I don't want someone to walk away. Sometimes I'm indifferent. I'm like, if you don't, like, the date's inconvenient, I don't really, the audience is not really my people, like, hire me or not, happy to do it, but otherwise, then I just throw my number out there and I just see what they say. But there might be a situation where I really want to do it. Let's say the cause is near and dear to my heart. And it's like, I'm not going to work for you for free, but I might be able to bend for you because I think you're doing great work. I don't think you're making a lot of money. You're a nonprofit. You're serving a group of people that I think needs to be served. So, or you're in a really cool location where my aunt lives. And so I can turn it into something fun. So I'm trying to convey that I'm willing to negotiate. And so then I might use language that still makes I will still make the first offer always. But I will then say something like, depending on the situation, a typical rate for something like this would be, X, but it can vary depending on a lot of aspects of the circumstance. So won't say directly it's negotiable, but I'll put enough language in there that'll give somebody confidence that if they really want me, but they can't make the rate, that they would come back and negotiate. And I do that in situations where I don't want them to just close the door, when in fact, for a few $1,000s of going back and forth, we could have made this work.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So for all of you that email me about those things, there's your answer. That's how to do it. Yeah. So
the other thing I'll add to it is looking for things that have value to you outside of a single issue, like money. So in any given relationship, there's not just one thing that we care about. We care about multiple things. So, to the point again, like going back to your world of in a partner, there's not just one. Even if you have a top quality, right, that you say this is what I love, you also have 7 other qualities that you love. And so it's a balance of like, what am I getting out of this in the whole? Same thing when we negotiate. So someone may not be able to pay your rate, but what else could they do? Like, I'll use the speaker example since that's what you talked about. Do they have a photographer on site? I could always use great photography. Do they have a videographer where I'm going to get the video? Like, what are the ways in which they promote this to their channels that might have value to me, et cetera, et cetera. So I try to think very holistically about the client and the relationship to say, you can add value to my life in lots of different ways, and I can also add value to your life in lots of different ways. So maybe I'm an expensive speaker for you, but guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to sit there the whole day, and I'm going to be available for people to ask me individual questions, or I'm going to sign books for people, or whatever you can do that's outside the discussion to bring it in that might have value for the other person, and say, what about this? What about this? And that creativity of tell me what you really care about so I can think about how I could add value outside of a single dimension is also really, really helpful.
That's awesome. And you said something that was really fun. You said, okay, well, before I would get on a call and I would make you love me first, so you'd be invested in it. Now, making me love you, for you to be a likable badass, isn't you talking about how amazing you are and how many books you've sold and how you're this and that and that. But tell me, and you have so many great examples in your book about how you would do that with me in this initial chit chat.
So yes, part of it is it's
like our first date.
Yeah, your first date. You're evaluating me on these two dimensions. I'm going to put this person in front of my audience. I'm going to spend the rest of my life with this person. Okay, this person needs to be really good at what they're doing. And I also got to convince this person is not going to be a pain in my butt. And those are the two things that I try to convey. So yeah, part of it is if the person doesn't know anything about me, I do have to do a little bit of resume selling to say, I was a management consultant for McKinsey. So I've had this professional experience. I've been an organizational psychologist for 20 years. I can rattle through some resume type things and put them in a natural way in the conversation. I can talk about, right? I have a lot of experience working with this particular type of audience, whatever it is. But then the other piece of it, the warmth, okay, they want to say, the way you vibe with me is the way you're going to vibe with my audience, right? So if I can chat with you easily and it's fun, I can see you being fun with them. I also will highlight ways in which I'm easy to work with. So this idea of I care about you. So when I'll say to my clients, okay, my job is to worry about this so you don't have to worry about this. You have a full-time job. You're putting this event together in your free time. So what I am supposed to do for you and what I will do is make it as easy for you as you want it to be, however you define easy. If easy is you can call me whenever you want and talk through a detail, great. If easy is you never speak to me again and I just show up in your event and I have a great event for your audience, that's what I will do. So I convey to people, I care about this being a good experience for you, and I have some understanding of what that's going to look like for you because you're a busy person who's not getting rewarded for doing this, and I am here as my professional duty to make this easier. And so those are things that I work in, and people, I think those are the ones, I think on the warmth piece, people often feel like they have to just share their resume and things like that. But in the very connected social media world that we live in, people can learn a lot about your resume without having to talk to you. What they can't learn as much is like the warmth piece. Like, what is it going to be like to interact with you? And so that's the one when we show up for the first time that I think we have to focus on conveying more so that I think what people do when they're insecure is like, here's the laundry list of all of my accolades and resumes. Sometimes you do have to say that, but I think that part we can research. What we can't research and we have to figure out human to human is, do you care about people? Are you enjoyable to interact with?
Yeah. And when you're talking to the person I love, it's like, okay, how can I be good for you? Like, what do you need? And how can I help you look good?
Exactly. And every single time I'm meeting with somebody, and I'll do this with you offline if we have a minute at the end, but every single time I'm meeting with somebody, the last thing I say to them is like, tell me what you care about and how I could help. And whether that's, I'm looking for my next great podcast guest, or, tell me, have you been to this new restaurant that's on our street, or whatever it is? What does somebody care about? And I think regardless, when you're in a situation, even if the purpose of the conversation is to be about you, where let's say someone's coaching you. So, you have a professional relationship with your clients, but you're still a human being, right? It's your job to help them. And just like it's my job to help people. But I do note when there are people who you talk to them and at no point do they ever ask anything about you or how they could help you or have a moment. And when people do, you take note. And when I do that for people are always like, thank you for asking. Right. That was great. I appreciate that. Like even if they don't have a good answer, which I always tell people, when someone asks how they can help you, you should have a good answer because people want to help and you should give them something to do. But that idea of in any relationship, right, the give and take, and to not make it one-sided and say, okay, what can I do to help? So that's almost always my end question whenever I'm meeting with somebody online is like, how can I help?
I love that. And, one last question. Like I said, this book is full of so many amazing gems. Can you share a few of your favorites that we might not have covered?
So two things I'm going to leave people with. One is add, don't subtract. So it's not a strategy, but more a philosophy. And that is personal relationship, professional relationship. You have to be yourself. You have to be you. And so a lot of times we're told to subtract things from ourselves. Women are told, don't speak in a hesitant way, don't apologize, don't do this. And that's basically saying, like, take something that you're doing and stop. And look, sometimes you can have effectiveness with that.
Sure.
But a lot of times it starts to feel inauthentic, but I'm not good at stopping. It's not me. And that's what I say. You don't have to stop. You could also think about going the other direction, which is add. So, how can I start with who I am? But then what could I layer in addition to who I am, that I could adopt as a new practice or behavior that would help me to show up as a little bit more assertive or a little bit more warm? And always start. Yeah, always start from the base of authenticity and say, you know what? I'm not really that good at talking about my accomplishments or wins. And so how else could I get that information out there? What could I do rather than subtract? So that's one. And the second thing is this idea of one swing thought. So as an analogy I got from a former student who was a collegiate golfer, and basically said, if you golf, which is a complicated physical game and mental game, but when they coach you in golf, they wouldn't let you correct more than one error in your swing at any one time. Because if you tried to do too many things, too many swing thoughts, it would be a disaster. And so even if you wanted to grow in 10 different ways, you would only work on one and then leave the other 9 aside, even though you recognize them, until that one became part of your new habit. You didn't need to think about it anymore, and then you could go to the next one. And I think that's really true for any area in which we're trying to improve in our life, including building our status, showing up as a likable badass, whatever it is it can be overwhelming in a process to feel like you have to just do 100 things differently, and it's just not productive. And so I'd say do one thing, adopt one thing you can do, and leave everything else to the side, because that's how we learn and that's how we grow, not by becoming a different human being overnight, but becoming a slightly better human, one day at a time.
Oh, I love that so much. So maybe you can add warmth, right? Maybe you can add inserting little things about how you are competent, can get the job done, or a great date, whatever that is. And maybe the thing to add is the one that kind of makes you go, oh, I don't know how to do that, right? That's your growing edge.
Exactly. But if it's too terrifying, that's not your first swing thought. That's going to be your fourth one. Do something that's just only scares you this much.
Just a little bit, not getting at the edge of the diving board and then leaping.
Exactly.
And on the first rung.
Exactly. 100%.
Oh my gosh. Alison, we're going to have a link to your book. Tell us where people can get more Alison.
More Alison. So best place, go to my website, AlisonFragale.com. And while you're there, I think there's a lot of media resources, all the podcasts I've done, all the articles I've written, all that stuff is there. But there's also links that you can easily find my LinkedIn and my Instagram. Those are the 2 social platforms that I'm on, and I'm very active there. And then the other one is I do have a free newsletter. It's called The Upper Hand. It's behavioral science to help women excel. But it's not only for women, and it's not only for work. So for example, one of the issues that I have kind of in the pipeline is thinking about women managing their fertility and things like that. So anything that's going to help women live their best lives inside and outside of work, I talk about. So people can subscribe and find it there.
You're amazing. Thank you so much. Smart Daters, I know you love this podcast episode. Clearly, I love Alison, and now I know you too, as our new likable badass. Love her too. So please share this episode with everyone you know. That would be your gift to both Alison and me. Write a rating, give us a 5-star on Spotify or Apple or Amazon or wherever you get this. And that will get you one more step closer to being the amazing, likable badass you are. Until next week and until our next episode, I wish you a week of love.